There's a moment, silent, brief. Someone calls you out, questions your worth, your character, your intent. And the average person, they do exactly what they were trained to do. They defend. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. I swear I'm not like that. It sounds fair, even noble. But to Machiavelli, that's the moment you lose everything. Because the second you defend yourself, you admit you're weak enough to need to. And in power games, perception is everything. If they see you flinch, they don't see a victim, they see blood. Machiavelli understood something most people never learn. The man who defends himself lowers himself. The man who doesn't forces the world to defend him instead. Here's the brutal truth. Defending rarely convinces anyone. It just shifts the power. Because the moment you justify your actions, you're playing on their field. You're saying, without realizing it, you have the authority to question me. And once they have that, they own the narrative.
Even if you're right, you still look guilty because only the weak rush to explain. The strong, they let the silence burn. They let the accusation hang in the air, untouched. Because here's the move Machiavelli would whisper in your ear. Don't defend, reflect. Turn the accusation into a mirror. Make the attacker look too emotional. Make them look obsessed, bitter, unstable. Because whoever speaks first loses the frame. And whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. Most people defend because they want to be understood. They think if they clarify enough, repeat themselves enough, they'll be vindicated. But that urge, that's not strategy. That's emotional weakness dressed up as righteousness. You don't want clarity. You want control. Clarity is for therapy. Control is for power. And power doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being untouchable. So when someone calls you arrogant, manipulative, cold, and you say, "No, that's not me," you've already lost. Because now you're reacting. You're proving you care. You've placed the ball in their court, and worse, you've given up the most Machiavellian weapon you had: mystery. Think about the most powerful person you've ever met. Not the loudest, not the most liked. The one who sat in silence and made you question everything without saying a word. Machiavelli would tell you this: the one who explains submits. The one who holds silence forces the world to explain him. Why? Because the human brain can't tolerate ambiguity. It fills silence with imagination, and imagination exaggerates power. You become bigger, darker, sharper than you really are, because they don't know where your edges end. In a room, someone throws shade, subtle or direct. Maybe a jab at your past, your success, your silence itself. Everyone turns to see what you'll say. Here's your move. Say nothing. No laugh, no smirk, no retaliation. Just presence, stillness. Because now they're not watching the insult, they're watching how you carry it. And when your silence holds weight, it flips the room. People think, why didn't he flinch? Did he expect this? Does he know something we don't? You didn't just dodge the attack, you made it irrelevant. Because the attacker didn't land a punch, they exposed themselves. You stayed still, they stumbled forward, and the entire frame belongs to you.
In the digital arena, there are no rooms, only eyes. No tone, just judgment. No time, only speed. Someone posts a call-out, a jab, a claim, a whisper crafted to look like truth, and everyone's watching how you'll react. Most panic. They post the apology, the clarification, the side of the story. But Machiavelli, he'd smile, because this is where narrative warfare begins. In the court of public opinion, silence speaks guilt, unless your silence carries weight. The key isn't defending, it's distorting. Someone accuses you of manipulation. You don't reply with a plea, you reply with a shift. People always call you dangerous when they can't control you. Now what happened? You didn't argue, you reframed. You held the mirror up and made them stare at their own fear. Suddenly, their accusation sounds like admiration. Their tone looks jealous. You look untouchable. That's not damage control, that's narrative dominance. Because in a world addicted to reaction, your refusal to defend becomes a form of sacred stillness, an aura of control that makes others spiral, while you rise, untouched.
There are 3 tools Machiavelli would slip into your hand, not to protect yourself, but to expose others: silence, redirection, and the blade. The blade isn't loud, it isn't brutal. It's precise. It slices the attacked in half with just a few words: calm, surgical, and final. They say, "You're arrogant." You say, "Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable." They say, "You're fake." You say, "Authenticity isn't owed, especially not to the reactive." They say, "You think you're better." You say, "No, I just stopped apologizing for being different." Each one a cut, a quiet reversal. You didn't defend yourself, you dismantled the frame. Because the true Machiavellian doesn't resist the label, he turns it, lets it reflect something fragile in the accuser, and then steps aside while their credibility bleeds out in front of the crowd. And the crowd always watches, not who's right, but who's rattled. Control in public isn't about volume, it's about emotional minimalism. Few words, still body, the look that says, "You just exposed your own insecurity, not mine." It's easy to look composed in a boardroom, much harder in a bedroom. That's where most people lose their edge, not in the face of enemies, but in the arms of someone who once loved them. Your partner says you don't care anymore, and you feel it, that jolt, that urge to explain, to fix, to reassure. But the second you do, you validate their emotional frame. You reward the outburst. You tell them subconsciously that panic is how they get control. Machiavelli would choose a colder move. He wouldn't shout, he wouldn't argue, he wouldn't even sigh. He'd pause and say quietly, "That's not how I see it." No defense, no counterattack, just detachment, laced with grounded certainty. And suddenly the script flips. They're not sure if they overreacted, if they sounded dramatic, if they've just played their strongest card and got nothing back. because what you just held was the most powerful currency in any relationship. The emotional tempo, and whoever controls the tempo controls the frame. That's not coldness, that's composure, and composure is magnetic.
There's a move colder than silence, and Machiavelli understood it better than anyone else. Disappearance. Not ghosting, not blocking, just the quiet erasure of presence while staying visible. Someone insults you, tries to provoke you, and instead of reacting, you vanish. No rebuttal, no explanation. You don't even acknowledge them. But you don't leave the stage. You simply remove your energy. What happens next is predictable and devastating. They spiral. They try again, louder this time, more dramatic, more desperate. They talk to others, post more. They flail because you just took away the one thing they need more than truth: validation. Even in conflict, most people aren't seeking resolution. They're seeking response. Proof that they matter to you. Proof that their noise has weight. When you deny them that, you're not ignoring them. You're making them face themselves. And most can't survive that reflection. Your silence becomes a mirror, and they begin to destroy themselves, just trying to get you to flinch. Someone calls you arrogant. You don't flinch. You tilt your head and say, "Strange how confidence makes people so uncomfortable." They call you manipulative. You pause, smile lightly, and reply, "Only those who can't be influenced say that." They say you're fake. Your eyes don't blink. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. These aren't comebacks, they're reversals. Judo flips that use their own emotional force against them. Machiavelli wouldn't defend, he would redirect. He would absorb the attack, then hand it back as a reflection of their own insecurity. Now, they're not on the offensive anymore. They're explaining, scrambling, trying to clean up what was supposed to be a blow, but now just made them look bitter. That's the shift. You didn't argue, you didn't deny, you made their insult about them and let them squirm under the weight of their own words. This isn't just power, it's elegance. And Machiavellian elegance doesn't shout. It whispers and lets the silence sting. Machiavelli's final lesson wasn't about tactics. It was about presence. See, silence alone isn't enough. Over time, silence becomes its own language. But presence, aura, is what makes it terrifying. The truly dangerous don't defend themselves because their existence is the defense. They don't argue, they define. Their posture, their pause, their stillness, it speaks. You think aura is charisma. It's not. It's restraint. It's knowing exactly when not to speak, when not to move, when not to blink. When someone accuses you and you simply say, "Is that how you see it?" With no shake in your voice, no heat in your chest, you signal one thing. You're not trying to be right. You're unbothered by being misunderstood. And that's where the crowd shifts. Because when you don't even try to defend yourself, others start to, quietly, naturally. People say, "That was uncalled for. Why are you still going after him?" They defend you not because you asked, but because you stayed above. That's Machiavellian leverage.
And it's built not with words, but with control over one thing: your own emotional energy. You don't need a good reputation. You need a strong one. The man with a good reputation plays to be liked. The one with a strong reputation, he plays to never be questioned. When you stop defending yourself, you stop building a reputation based on permission, and instead, you start building one based on hesitation. People don't attack what they fear. They hesitate. They think twice. They whisper, "He's not someone you cross casually." That fear? That's earned. Not by aggression, but by stillness. The kind that says, "I know exactly who I am, and I'll let the silence speak for me." You don't win by being understood. You win by being unfazed. And when every move you make or don't make feels deliberate, dangerous, unshakable, the game flips. You're no longer just in control. You are the control. That's not reaction. That's definition. And it's how the room begins to shift before you even speak. A presence so composed, so intentional, that even your silence becomes a decision. One that echoes longer than any defense ever could. And that is how a man becomes untouchable.